Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Gamecock Talk series as we go through another week of Gamecock football. Today, Thursday, the Gamecocks took on the South Carolina State Bulldogs in Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium. Obviously, because of the hurricane that's been coming through this area, it's hit Florida and it's hit a lot of those islands out there, and it's going to be hitting South Carolina probably Friday and Saturday, so it's gonna hopefully everybody can stay safe out there. I know everybody that's already been hit with it. I hope you guys can all rebuild and recover from it as fast as possible, or that you didn't get hit that hard at all. But at the end of the day, thankfully the Gamecocks and their athletic department and the Bulldogs, basically their athletic department as well, both sides were able to come to an agreement to move this game up to Thursday afternoon. A 7:30 game, so another non-conference matchup at night in Williams-Brice Stadium. That is a very, very, very beautiful thing to see. And the Gamecocks come out here and they take care of business. 50-10 was the final score. Not a lot you can really say about this game. South Carolina State, we haven't played them in 13 years. It's been a long time since we've even had a Thursday night game, and I'm pretty sure I read that one of the last Thursday night games was against South Carolina State, so that's an odd coincidence there. But at the end of the day, South Carolina came out here and they took care of business. They had a good game by all means, and there's just a few things that we can really talk about this team because overall, just a decent showing. I mean, Spencer Rattler finished the day 21 for 27, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had some really beautiful passes deep downfield, and I heard the commentator say this during the game, and I completely agree with it. This should have been the second straight week for Spencer Rattler with no interceptions. Last week against Charlotte, obviously offensively, we didn't get him going quite as much as we expected him to. He didn't have any passing touchdowns because the running game was just very, very good last week, but they didn't really need him to score last week. This week, he did get a couple of scores, and he was kind of throwing it around a lot more than we saw last week, but 2 interceptions this week compared to 0 last week. It should have been 0 this week as well. Xavier Legette, 2 interceptions right off of his hands into the defender's hands. So I really feel bad for Spencer in that mark. But, it's just one of those things. It happens. You just got to kind of knock it out in the back of your mind, and you got to keep moving on. We saw Doty for another a couple drives there in the fourth quarter. He didn't have many passing statistics, but he did end up running for a touchdown there at the end of the game. Marshawn Lloyd finished the day a lot less eventful from last week, but still very, very good. 11 for 80 and a touchdown, 7 yards per carry. Spencer Rattler was the second best rushing attack, 5 for 31 and a touchdown. Then we had Deontay Miller, I believe that's his name. Dante Miller was his name. We haven't seen much of him at all this year, the transfer senior, but he looked good in the couple of carries that he got this week. I mean, obviously, we're against the backups for South Carolina State, but he did have a touchdown that, unfortunately for Dante, was called back. 2 for 29 for him. Christian Bill Smith struggled today, 6 for 15, and the same with Juju McDowell, 4 for 13, and like I mentioned before, Luke Doty with a rushing touchdown there in his only run, and Jaheim Bell, 2 carries, 4 yards, and a touchdown. Pretty good showing for him on the ground there because, I mean, what are you going to say? A touchdown is a touchdown. Receiving-wise, nobody really got a lot of yards today. 3 for 61 for Jalen Brooks, 2 for 48 for Jaheim Bell. Antoine Wells, Juice Wells, did have 7 catches, only 38 yards though. No touchdowns for him. Austin Stogner had the 1 catch for 15 yards and a touchdown, and Marshawn Lloyd also tacked on another receiving touchdown to his total. Got a lot of depth on this field, or on the game today. We got a lot of bench players that don't normally see the field. It gave them some chances to play and get out there and make some, get a sack, get a couple yards in the run game, get something going for our bench. You never know when injuries are going to hit. And it was nice, really nice to see the young guys and the guys that don't play a lot get out there on the field. Defensively, we did pretty good. I mean, the defense dominated just as you would expect them to. Off to a slow start again, and we'll kind of get into that after I finish going through the statistics. Interceptions and turnovers wise, Martin Scott did have 1 interception for 37 yards. He actually dropped another one just the drive before this. He almost had a pick 6 as well. Unfortunately, he was tackled at about the 5-yard line. Sherrod Green had a catch or an interception at a nice, he cuts it off in the middle of the field. 26-yard carry back for him, and Marcellus Dial with the interception. They also had a block punt, which didn't really affect much of that punt because it actually kept going as it bounced off of Martin Scott's head. So didn't really affect it too much. But as I was saying, the Gamecocks came out here and they played a team that was clearly inferior to them, clearly physically and mentally and all of that stuff was inferior to them. And that's not a knock on South Carolina State. It's just how this should be. We should beat teams like this. You don't really see a lot of big name SEC schools losing to teams like this, and that's something that we need to be consistent on. And they kept it straight today. The defense played well. Still very, very slow to begin with. You know, at the beginning of the game, start out with that first interception. South Carolina State comes out onto the field after that. Thankfully, the defense was here to play. Last week, they started out slow as well. This week, they were here to play, and that's just been something beneath Beamer that I've continued to see is every week we start out slow. We start out unprepared for our games, and I'm the biggest Beamer supporter you'll ever meet. I'm a huge fan of Shane Beamer, so that's nothing to knock him. It just seems like they don't quite prepare the guys for those game times or the beginning of games, you know, when it actually hits, because it's different from practicing it and actually seeing the game go down, and there's not much you can do to prepare the guys for that. But we saw it last year a lot. You know, that game against Tennessee ended up not being a terrible game, but when you let Tennessee put up 28 points in the first quarter, you're not going to win that game. I mean, we tried to scratch back, and we did okay in the last three quarters, but just not a good, you know, a good way to start the game. Even against Arkansas. Arkansas scored on their first three drives before we even looked or sniffed a stop on the field. And that's a 21 swing right there, a 21-point swing there. And you just have to be able to limit those. And I think the Gamecocks could really use a game where they come out here and they play well from start to finish, because tonight was our first touchdown in the first quarter from the first, 5 games now. So that's a very, very disappointing thing to say. This team has to find a way, especially getting into what is really the meat of our schedule, the really intense part of our schedule. We just have to find a way to get going early in the game, and whether that's through getting the passing game going early or relying on Marshawn Lloyd a lot in the first quarter, because he has been so dominant these last few weeks. I don't know what the answer to that is, but at the end of the day, you can't complain about a 50-10 win. I mean, you can't really say there was much bad about this. I mean, other than the usual stuff, you know, South Carolina kicking themselves in the foot, turnovers, fumbles, just playing loose. The Gamecocks still have a lot of maturity to go, but we saw just how talented this team can be this week especially, and last week as well, against a better Charlotte team. They're not a great team, but they're better than South Carolina State, but a better Charlotte team. So we have played well these last few weeks, but really the main question you can ask today is, where does this lead us as we go forward into a unfavorable matchup against Kentucky? Now, I do think Kentucky is a beatable team. They've shown cracks, and pretty much every team on the rest of the schedule has shown weaknesses and struggled at points during the season. So I'm not completely writing this season off. You know, I think we still have a very high chance to make a bowl game. All we have to do to make a bowl game is win the games we should win, counting Missouri and Vanderbilt, and maybe pull off an upset against one ranked team. That's all we have to do to make a bowl game at this point, and I will count that as something this Gamecock team can do. They're just too talented not to pull off something like that. But if we want to go for more than 6-6, this matchup against Kentucky is going to be really big for this team. And the 7th-ranked Wildcats are facing off against the Ole Miss Rebels this weekend, so I'm definitely going to be watching that one at 12 p.m. on Saturday. That's going to be a big indicator of how the Wildcats are going to perform against the Gamecocks. But unfortunately for us, it is a 7:30 primetime matchup in Lexington, so it's going to be difficult. They have to come out to play, and I have faith that we can get it done. That rushing attack in Kentucky is no joke. They've got a good quarterback in Will Levis, or Levis, or however you pronounce his name, apparently the number 1 pick in the draft. They've just got a really good team over there in Lexington, and the Gamecocks were in the game last year. I mean, people forget, if we had any type of positive offensive play last year against Kentucky, we were going to win that game. We barely could move the ball passing-wise. We couldn't run the ball, and they couldn't do anything offensively either. Our defense came up with turnovers. They came up with stops at times when we needed them, and we ended up losing by about 6 points in a major swing that season. Thankfully, the Gamecocks bounced back after that, and they went on a nice little win streak afterwards. But this year, if we can get something going offensively, if our defense can do what they did last year, we have a major chance, in my opinion, to make some big noise against Kentucky. I don't think this matchup is going to be as nearly as bad as that Georgia game. We just looked flat and we looked unprepared for that. And I am excited for a primetime matchup against the Wildcats. That is Saturday, October 8th at 7:30 p.m. I hope you guys all get a chance to watch that. How do you feel about this game against South Carolina State? Are there any positives or negatives that you kind of would like to talk about? Go ahead and comment down below. I love talking and having discussions in the comments. Thank you all for watching this video and continuing to join me on this journey in this series on YouTube. If you do enjoy my content, please hit the like button and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace.